Be here in a minute. Is it working? Okay. Good evening. Today's November 17th, 2014, regular meeting of the Board of Education District 64. Vicki, would you take a roll?
Bob Johnson.
Here.
John Heidi.
Here.
Vicki Lee is here. Tony Borelli.
Here.
Scott Zimmerman.
Here.
Dathan Paterno.
Here.
And Dan Collins.
Who will be here in a few moments. Tonight we are planning to go into a closed session, then convene our normal regular board meeting at 7:30. Prior to that, we, in the closed session, will be discussing several issues, one of which will be district and its employees or their representatives concerning salary schedules of one or more classes, 5 Illinois Compiled Statute 122C2, as well as pending litigation, 5 Illinois Compiled Statutes 122C11. Prior to that, I want to remark that tonight is the first night that the board has gone full Monty, and we are fully computerized at this point. There was some bumps in the road, at least I had some bumps in the road utilizing this over the weekend, a lot of freezing up. There was some data, I don't know if it was my Wi-Fi at home, if it was this particular computer, or if it was the programming. Just anybody have any other problems, or was it seamless on other parts? And I know, Bob, you froze up a couple of times, but
Just once. But
just once.
Yeah, I don't know what the reason was, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's operated well, and I've had a modification or two made.
My husband calls that operator-related error.
Well, could very well
happens to
be.
me. Yes.
Yeah, I've not put that out of the realm of things. Maybe not.
Well,
Oh, boy.
not this evening.
Not tonight. So there's a couple of other things that'll come up a little later on, but we're going to go into our closed session. And for the above-mentioned reasons, 5 Illinois Compiled Statute 122C2 and 2C11, do I have a second?
Second.
We'll need a roll call for this, so starting with Dathan.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye. Yes.
Okay, we'll go into close. Good evening. We are going to reconvene the general meeting of the Board of Education tonight. We started at 6:30 in closed session, discussing a couple of items, and we are back. We're going to start by having a presentation by Franklin School, and led by Mr. Dan Walsh, the principal. And before I get into it much further, Dan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. We are honored to have the District 64 School Board here at Franklin School, and we'd like to start this evening off with the posting of the colors and the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm proud to have our Cub Scout Troop 105 with their leader, Mrs. Carolyn, representing Franklin School this evening. I'm going to have Drew Kaler present the colors. As they said in Apollo 13, there's our glitch for this mission. So, at this time, I would like to also have our Cub Scout troop come up and present certificates of appreciation to our school board here this evening. So, Scouts, can you please come up again?
So on Saturday, November 15th, there was a special day that the Illinois Association of School Boards held called Stand Up for Public Education. And it was a simple way for the IASB to honor the hundreds and hundreds of school boards that do volunteer work that is very important to schools across the state of Illinois. Well, we weren't here on Saturday because it was the weekend. So we're celebrating our terrific Board of Education today. And how lucky is Franklin School that you get to host this event? Because these 7 grade scouts can now help me say thank you to our board members. They are volunteers. They give up countless hours at meetings and reading packets and information that we send, all in an effort to continue to make our district the best district in town. Beyond town, the best district around. Boys, do you agree that we have a pretty amazing school district and a great school system? Well, your teachers have a hand in that, your principal, and these 7 people also volunteer tirelessly to make our district great. So you're going to help me thank them. Who has, let's see, John Heidi, come on down. He's our longest serving board member. Can you hand him his certificate and maybe give him a nice firm handshake of thanks? Thank you. Who's next? Let's see. Mr. Johnson, come on down. How about Mrs. Lee? Who's next? Dr. Borelli. He's our board president. Thank you. Mr. Zimmerman is our board vice president. Dr. Paterno. And Mr. Collins. So thank you very much to the board. If the audience would please help me by standing for public education, as today's day is entitled, and help me thank our board members for their service. Boys, thank you so much. Since you're here and you've been such good helpers, maybe you can help us eat some cookies too? Sounds like a deal? All right, board, we're going to take just a quick cookie break over here. So come on over.
I think one of those might be.
Board members, do you need a cookie break?
Okay, we'll be right there. Oh, so you're going to John?
I want to get in the way of the kids.
Mr. Walsh, did you have a video? Okay.
Sorry, just wanted to say goodnight. I also did want to share some information from our PTA, as they couldn't be here this evening, but they asked me to share some information on what they're doing at this time. So the Franklin PTA, in order to pursue, they've decided on a new goal for this year, and their mission is healthy living. And in order to pursue this goal, they've changed our lunch food vendor to Healthy Kids Kitchen, which provides our children with healthier options. They serve entree, side, and fresh fruit. They've also incorporated fruit and vegetable side on the pizza day as well. Typically pizza day was pizza, and they were adding on apples or other different items as well. They've started Franklin Fit Night, which is held once a month for 45 minutes in our gym, hosting different activities for the kids. For example, they had a yoga night and they had a karate night already, and they continue to have more variety coming through. They're in the process of creating an indoor walking club to be held every Friday before school for all children to join. And they want our children to know how important it is to stay active and make healthier food choices. So at this time, I'm going to show a brief video I created with some highlights of current events and initiatives taking place here at Franklin. So can you all see the screen from where you're at? Welcome to Franklin School. We're very excited to have our school board here today, and we wanted to take this opportunity to wish you a happy Board Appreciation Day. We do appreciate all that you do, as well as all of the time you've committed to support District 64 in your volunteer role as a school board member. Thank you. So let me give you some highlights of Franklin School and some of the things that we're proud of here at Franklin. In relation to the District Sustainability Committee, Franklin School has a recycle club. Our Recycle Club focuses on guiding and teaching students at lunchtime, and it also involves student volunteers who help students properly sort their waste and explain to the students where their waste will go. One of the areas we're bringing to focus is what is potential compost and what is going into the landfills. As a member of the Board Advanced Technology Committee and the Technology Implementation Committee, I was so excited the day that our Chromebooks arrived in August. We couldn't wait to get them in the hands of our students so that they could get started utilizing the tools and applications for learning. As much as we enjoy the new technology with the Chromebooks, the 3rd through 5th grade and our additional iPads for our primary grades, we're also utilizing the smartboards more and more effectively as instructional tools. This summer, I was able to go to an event called Google University, and I can't wait to get my hands on the new Google Glass, which is coming out very soon. I believe the potential applications will be remarkable tools for communication and instructional purposes in the near future. One of the key applications that we will be using the Chromebooks for this year will be park testing. We'll be doing park testing both in March as well as in May. Our teachers have been designing instruction with the Common Core strategies at the forefront of their minds. We are reviewing sample questions and planning instruction for students so they can be prepared to answer more complex questions. These questions will require students to demonstrate greater concentration, deeper thought, as well as the application of the skills related to the standards we are teaching. What do we do at Franklin? We are very proud of our Franklin Rocks program and happy to see it continue for its 3rd year. Franklin Rocks is our method of advancing civil behavior at Franklin School. ROCKS stands for respect, optimism, citizenship, kindness, and self-control. It's discussed daily on the announcements and reinforced throughout the day in classrooms, hallways, and at lunch recess. This year, we continued our program of rewarding positive behavior, and just last Friday, we added a teamwork theme. We kicked off the new program with a special presentation and a quick performance by our house band, Extra Credit. As you can see, Franklin Rocks is alive and strong among our students.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh. That's great. Franklin does rock.
Thanks, Dan. I know one of the advantages of having the board go out into the community is seeing exactly what each building is doing, what's going on, get the timber and the feel of what's happening, and Franklin continues to be a shining star. All of our buildings are shining stars, and I'm very happy to see the enthusiasm and effort coming out. It's obvious, and I love the rock thing. It's great. I appreciate it. I also like to thank everybody for the board appreciation. I think I can speak on behalf of everyone here where I feel that we all feel that it's an honor and privilege to be able to represent the community, being both elected and in the opportunity to serve the community, and we all look for the conclusion of this term. We all know that April 7th of 2015 brings another election yet. Some of us are up for re-election. Some of us will continue to run. However, there may be a seat or two open, so we invite any applications from those in the audience or those who are on the TV sets back home watching this to apply and run and serve their community in this significant way by being a member of this board. So thank you. Bringing us back to our agenda, the next item is one item that must be present on any open meeting that we have, and that's a section for public comments. So if there's anybody in the audience who would like to speak on any topic that is not currently on the agenda, please come forward. And not seeing anybody, we will move forward to item number 1, which is presentation on Senate Bill 16. On October 1st, I received an email from Dr. Heinz saying that she was notified of somebody asking questions, and her comment to me was, how much does the board know about Senate Bill 16? And I said, frankly, nothing. I'm not aware of anything, and we had not up until that time had any presentations to bring us back up into full awareness on this particular topic. I suggested to Dr. Heinz that we therefore provide a time for the board to be educated on this particular topic, and she has gone out, spoke to our EdRed representatives, and I'm eagerly looking forward to this and find out the particulars. So, Dr. Heinz?
So I have asked the executive director of EdRed, Karen Valdez, to speak to the board and the community tonight to keep us really abreast of what's been happening with Senate Bill 16. There's been a lot of movement in this area with a new governor soon to take office. It's going to have kind of some unknown, there's unknown potential out there for this bill to come forth vote this spring. It could be a different iteration of the board, of the bill. We're not really sure, but Karen is very active as EdRed lobbies on behalf of suburban schools. She was just in Springfield giving testimony. So I've really asked her to kind of give you a brief history of how this all started and how the bill is moving forward and implications that we need to keep our eyes on. Because if Senate Bill 16 were to call for a vote, there are potential significant cost ramifications to some districts in Illinois. So Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you. We ask that you use the microphone, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heinz. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Karen Valadez. I'm the new executive director. Julie forgot to mention that as well. I've only been on the job since the 15th of June. So I'm undertaking this bill as well as many others that have been pending before the General Assembly. I apologize in advance. I lost my voice over the weekend, so I'm doing my best. So I am here this evening, as well for the community, to give you a little bit of background on Senate Bill 16. There's been this discussion that's been ongoing in Springfield around education funding reform. And this discussion has actually been going on since July of 2013. When I say 2013, I'm talking about a Senate resolution that was introduced. It was 431 that created one of the state's many acronyms called the EFAC Committee, or the Senate Education Funding Advisory Committee. This 8-member committee was made up of Senate members, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side of the aisle. And they actually held 8 hearings around the state of Illinois. They traveled the state from one end to the other, and they heard from stakeholders, from the community, and other just general citizens to talk about education, to talk about the way it's funded in Illinois, and to talk about its heavy reliance on property taxes. That said, after 8 meetings, a report was issued, which in your document, it's the first 11 pages. In that document, it talks a little bit about the way education should be funded, the heavy reliance on property taxes, recommendations that this group made in, consortium with the general populace, with the legislature, and with the State Board of Education to look at the way state funds education. Of this education funding, it's about a little over a third of the full funding that education comes up with. So this discussion occurred in July of 2013. It came up with several recommendations, one including taking the current state funding formula, which is made up of 3 different components. So we currently have general state aid, which is one bucket. We have something called a poverty grant, which is a secondary bucket. And then we have categoricals. This hinges around ELL populations, disabilities, special education, that type of thing. So basically what they want to do is take all those categoricals, the poverty grant, and the GSA, and lump it into one document. So they wanted to do a single stream funding formula, and that was their recommendation. This report came out in February of 2014. By March of 2014, the Senate sponsor, Representative Andrew Menard, who lives about 70 miles south of Springfield, introduced a piece of legislation that would create this single funding formula known as Senate Bill 16, which for many schools around the state has become the bane of its existence. Included within this bill, it creates a new set of weighted categories. So it goes away from this general state aid, poverty grant, categoricals, and creates new weights like ELL populations, special education. It also deals with gifted programs, and it takes a lot of metrics into account around high school outcomes. Some of the things it doesn't touch on is high cost special education. It doesn't touch on teacher preparedness. It doesn't touch on, just basic funding of many services. So in this time period, over this year, we've had a report come out. Within a month, we've had a bill introduced. By May of this past 2014, this bill actually passed the state Senate. In passage, many of the members that voted in favor, and it did pass on a partisan vote, many of the members that did vote in favor said, we're going to do this to keep the conversation going. We believe that the current formula is out of date, and we believe that it needs to be changed. By doing that, they actually advanced a piece of legislation that was flawed in many ways. So this bill has gone through this discussion process, been introduced, passed the Senate. Well, then it arrives in the House. The House takes a completely different take on this bill than the Senate did. It arrives in the House. By June of last year, the House Speaker actually introduced or created an 11-member partisan working group made up only of Democrats. These Democrats ran the gamut of the state. They included the majority leader, who's from Chicago. They included the finance chairman, who's from Southern Illinois. They included the appropriations chair for the Democrats, who's from Macomb. So they really did run the gamut. But there were no Republicans in this committee. And in this process, they invited different stakeholder groups, about 26, including EdRed. And during that time, they said, please come in and tell us what you think of the bill. So we did. We told them, this is a framework for change. It really is. Our member districts, who make up 90 school districts, several special ed cooperatives, and the intermediate service centers in the city of Chicago or Cook County area. Of those 90-some districts, only 4 districts of those would win under Senate Bill 16, thereby gaining dollars. Park Ridge-Niles actually loses approximately $2.3 million of their state funding under Senate Bill 16. This may not seem large in the grand scheme of things because some other districts are actually having more like $13 million in state funding taken away from them. But when you look at the actual dollars that your district receives, it's approximately $2.9 million. This is about a 76% cut to your state appropriations. So we don't believe that this bill really touches on many things that it should. When we did talk to the House Working Group this summer, we asked them to make some concessions. We understand that this part of the state, it costs more to live here. The bill does not include anything around a regionalized cost adjustment. It costs more to educate, it costs more to live, it costs more to actually employ. So please take that into account. We asked them to look at teacher preparedness and how that actually impacts the classroom. We asked them also to look at mandate relief. The state of Illinois, when an issue comes up, General Assembly looks at it, could only be impacting one part of the state. They believe it needs to be a statewide mandate. So we need to look at those things. It's a 12-page document currently of what the mandates are that are required by school districts. So if we're going to have dollars taken away from us, we want some relief in those areas. So with all this said, actually tomorrow I'm heading to Springfield to talk to a joint committee. It's the House Elementary and Secondary Education and Substantive and Appropriations Committee, who for the first time the House will hold a public hearing on Senate Bill 16. It is not anticipated by the House sponsor, Linda Chapalavia, who is from Aurora, that she will call the bill in current form. That said, what is this bill going to look like? We have talked to her, stakeholders around the state have talked to her, and to the working group and to the legislators. How does this need to be addressed? The Senate sponsor has agreed that some of these pieces need to be included within the legislation. That said, the General Assembly goes back into session for their 2-week veto session on Wednesday. They've already canceled Friday. Then they come back the week after Thanksgiving for 3 days. During that time period, they're actually required by something called a supermajority or 3/5 vote to pass legislation. There was a recent election, in case you all missed it. We do have a new governor coming in, taking that into account as well. Our governor-elect has said that he is interested in education, adding additional funds to education. But he has also said in his comments that he would like to lift the number of charters included within the state of Illinois and actually divide the general state aid 50-50 between public schools and charter schools, because they're all public. Okay, that said, I don't exactly agree with that. But I think there's a lot of things at stake here. We need to look at this holistically. There's also another issue that's currently pending in Springfield. House Speaker Michael Madigan for years has said he believes that school districts should be responsible for the pension costs of their teachers. That said, this bill, Senate Bill 16, is sitting out there. There is 5 pension lawsuits currently pending around something called Senate Bill 1 that look to overhaul the state 5 pension systems. There could be a ruling by the end of this month. Taking that into account, the speaker could say, okay, schools, you're getting your pension costs, and you're also going to take your cut under Senate Bill 16. So we're watching that very closely, because we believe that actually the pension piece of it could have a more dire impact on our school districts. because of the unknown actual costs at this point in time. So these are two major issues that do play off each other. We are also working on a bill with a state senator around mandate relief, trying to look at how we in our schools understand better on how to roll things out, allow money to move around, and that the state shouldn't necessarily have their hand in that pot. So those three issues are really hinged together, and the discussion is very fluid at this point in time. As I mentioned, there's these 6 days in veto session. Then there's 2 more days called lame duck session, which occur in January. At that point, after January 1, it only requires 50+1 in votes. So we could see a lot of this get passed after the first of the year. So please stay on your toes. A lot of this is pending, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. Second of all, I just would like some clarification. When you say that we potentially, if this passes, District 64 may lose $2.3 million. Now, I wasn't quite certain because the district receives financial aid, we're in that category where we received a fixed amount per student every year. Is that the amount that is going to be dropped, or is there a reallocation of property taxing where the district receives the predominance of its income?
No, to clarify that. So the dollars that you actually receive from the state, that's what would be reduced. This bill does not at all touch property taxes. That said, when we talk about property taxes in the state, those taxes are significantly higher in Cook County and the collar counties. So we've also asked them to look at PTEL and PTAB and give us some relief under those issues. So to that point, it is strictly dollars that we receive from the state.
And Tony, you're thinking about the flat grant. We're a flat grant district, we get a certain allocation
Right.
per student.
Yep.
Exactly.
But it could also be if you receive any additional categoricals, those dollars are also included in that amount.
So any state
Any state funding.
funding.
Those 3 buckets she was talking about.
Mhm.
So Karen, do you have any thoughts on what, our school district could do to try to help, advance our position to keep us as fiscally healthy as possible?
Sure. I will tell you that there are several pieces of additional legislation out there as well. There's 2 current House resolutions. One, 1276, sponsored by Ron Sandick, also included in your packet, that actually, it talks about the impact of this bill, and over 40 of the House members have signed on to it at this point. It's basically known as Kill Senate Bill 16. Then there's an additional piece of legislation, House Resolution 1267, sponsored by David McSweeney, a Republican from Barrington, who introduced a piece of legislation warning away from the cost shift. Again, about 40 members of the House have already signed on. Of your members who actually represent you, all of them have said that they oppose Senate Bill 16 in its current form, as well as the cost shift. Given the climate moving forward with our new governor-elect, there's been some animosity between our new governor-elect and the current House Speaker. That said, anything's possible. What could pass, given Senate Bill 16 and given the possible pension cost shift, it is possible in maybe a fantasy world that the Speaker could get a ruling on those 5 pieces of current pending lawsuits, decide he's going to add that to Senate Bill 16, gut the current bill, and throw in some sweeteners. We'll give you guys some mandate relief. We'll give you a regionalized cost adjustment. Now, why can't you guys vote for this? We're not going to actually fully implement Senate Bill 16, but the state needs you to do this. Our two Democratic leaders who hold supermajorities in both of their chambers don't even need a Republican in the room to call session. They're very persuasive. And if they want the bills to move, the bills will move. So anything's possible.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So Karen, can I ask a question?
Yes.
We've received a couple emails from a number of kind of grassroots, different school district community members wanting us to talk to our legislators and, you got that, John? Thank you. Wanting us to, contact our local legislators, send letters, get involved. Is that something, one of the things we wanted to have your opinion on today is that something you think we should be considering? Should we, I see some of our community members here in the audience, should we be getting the word out to the community to contact legislators and weigh in on their thoughts regarding Senate Bill 16?
Absolutely, I would. And not as a scare tactic, but definitely inform your community and let them know what's happening, because this could cause a more heavy reliance on property tax, and this could cause a greater burden, especially when we talk about the pension cost shift. There's currently a piece of language included in Senate Bill 16. The city of Chicago pays their own pensions. Under Senate Bill 16, that would switch and go to the state. So if there were a switch where everybody else's went to them, ideally, Chicago's would be downstate. We then would be paying for Chicago's pensions. They're currently insolvent, not that TRS isn't, but it would create a larger burden on the TRS system. So that said, I would definitely get the word out and let them know this isn't like code red, but it could get to code red.
It's orange.
Yeah.
Okay. Getting there. All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Karen? Again, thank you, and I'm sure you'll be keeping us posted on any further developments.
Sure, absolutely. And I will send Dr. Hines. There is a link that you can fill out if you'd like to comment on Senate Bill 16 currently. Because of the hearing tomorrow, you can either send a witness slip in favor or against the bill. So feel free to do that as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure we'll be discussing this as time goes on, as this blossoms into more of a headache. Dr. Hines, next topic on our agenda is the discussion of the District 64 school calendar. We've had a bit of an introduction at our last meeting, and by now I think that there are some things to report.
Yes, indeed. So we have had our second internal calendar committee meeting, and we really scheduled it right around the time that District 207 went to their board with a second revision to their 2015-16 school calendar. So we met last week, and we took a look at District 207's calendar. I do believe that after our first meeting, when a representative of District 207 came to our meeting, Dr. Dietz, we gave him quite a bit of feedback in terms of their first go-round with the calendar, expressing some concern in terms of just how early they were starting, the length and placement of their winter as well as spring break, and then the ending dates within the calendar. I was pleased that he really came and listened, and he took our feedback back to their internal calendar committee, and they took another pass at the calendar, and I think the calendar, the second board-approved calendar, is a lot better. So just to give an overview, they will be starting, their first day of school will be on Monday, August 17th, which is about a week sooner than we have typically started. We had Institute Day this year on the 25th, and students started on the 26th. The winter break placement is fairly typical in terms of right around if you celebrate Christmas, right around that Christmas holiday, the couple days before they're off, coming back typically around the 4th or 5th of January is kind of standard in District 64. 207 will be doing that as well. Spring break historically has been around the last week in March. Their new calendar for 15-16 places spring break at that same time. Good Friday is off. It's March 25th, so you've got a whole week coming back to school April 4th. And then the biggest difference, and would be that they will test May 25th, 6th, and 7th, and the kids will be out of school on Friday, May 27th. So that's their calendar. What our internal calendar committee has now done, and you have a copy of the survey questions, we've created a survey that we will have go live tomorrow, and we're going to survey staff and community. And we have them weighing in. I think it wound up being a total of 8 questions. Really just trying to get a sense of what the community is looking for and what are some of their top priorities. Is it total alignment with the high school, start date, end date, and kind of everything in between? Is it getting close? Absolutely syncing up for winter and spring, but maybe we don't have to be lockstep in terms of the exact dates we start. So we're really seeking input from the community. And then once the window closes, we will analyze the data and bring it back to you. We've mocked up a calendar. If 64 went pretty lockstep with 207, we'll give you another draft based on the feedback from the staff and community. And then we'll have a discussion in terms of how the board would like to proceed and what recommendations they have in terms of getting a calendar out to our community, hopefully in January, no later than January. So that's my update. What questions can I answer for anybody?
Dr. Hines, I have one question. I understand the reason why 207 has changed their calendar, in part based on an academic philosophy. Would there be any advantages or disadvantages to our elementary education to follow suit?
You know, we don't have the exams at the end of every semester, the comprehensive exams, the way the high school does. So that wouldn't be something that would be a big priority to us. Their number one reason is, as many of you have probably heard, is so that the high schoolers can take their exams before winter break, head off and enjoy family time and an opportunity to recharge their batteries over a 2-week break and not have to worry about studying for finals. You know, we just don't approach our academics that way, so.
We don't have the same requirements.
Right. Our kids aren't studying over break. They're sledding and opening presents and enjoying. So it's a different animal here at the K-8 level. But for families that have kids in both systems, you know, we're mindful of the fact that we also want to have that family time where all of our kids are together under the same roof. So that would be probably our biggest priority in terms of trying to align with the high school as closely as possible.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Hines?
Yeah, I asked this question last time. I'd just like a little bit more specification. How are we going to guarantee that we only get one person responding one time to the surveys? How do we know that?
MJ is not here today. She's at a conference, our director of tech, but Bernadette has been working closely with MJ and I on this, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Right. The survey is going to go out through the SurveyMonkey tool, and it's going to have a discrete code to each email address that it goes to. And we are asking, while we have multiple email addresses in some instances for each household, we're asking within the survey itself and in the preliminary introduction to it to have each home complete it once, being mindful that there are, you know, dual households that it might have different interests for their child. But this way we're asking for each home. And again, by having it done by email address, and it's generating a discrete link. So that link can't be used by someone responding.
So it's by invitation only?
Yes,
Okay.
and then staff are coming through the same way.
Great.
Our staff will each have their own email address to respond.
Thank you.
Just as a technology question aside, was that a difficult thing to establish, or was it easy, or was there any cost associated with doing this little technological identifier?
It's a minimal cost. We did have to upgrade our SurveyMonkey account because we couldn't send that volume of emails out, which we will be doing. You know, it's upwards of 5,000 emails or so that will go out. But it was a very small cost, I think maybe $100
And it was just
or
a few
$200.
conversations with reps from SurveyMonkey.
Right.
Yeah,
And there's some
one-time cost.
background time investing in learning how to do this, but now that we do know how to do this, we see ourselves using it more frequently in the future in this particular role.
Well, that's my idea. Is it a one-time cost?
No. Yes.
Well, it's an annual
Yearly.
subscription.
Oh, I get you. I get you.
And we had already been at a certain level, so we just kicked it up slightly.
And if we're going to go into the CEC evaluations and new strategic plan, are there ideas that we'll be utilizing SurveyMonkey over the next 6 to 12 months to?
Bernadette and I, along with Dr. Lopez, talked to our strategic planning consultant, and there is a survey component that we can decide to use if we would like to, and if so, you know, we're all set up with SurveyMonkey to do so, and again, ensuring that we're getting one response per email address that we have within our Power School system. And then I don't know that the CEC, the System Overview Assessment, will have a survey component, but, you know, yearly, we're going to be looking to survey, I'm sure. So it was a good upgrade.
Dr.
Great.
Hines will also do it through the facility master planning process.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. See, takes a village.
So when is the survey planned to go out to folks for that?
We're ready to do it tomorrow.
Okay, and is it staying the same as kind of was presented in the materials we got?
Yes, that's why we were debating if we were going to pull it today, and I said, no, I'd really rather give the board the update, see what your thoughts were, if we were wildly off the mark, or if you thought we were spot on in terms of the questions we're asking. We did want to keep it somewhat streamlined. We did poll the internal calendar committee. We looked back at a survey calendar done in 2008, so, and we kind of finessed the survey questions from there. Did you have thoughts on any particular survey questions?
No, actually, I thought the questions were good. I just had a question or two, like on the first question, it asks what schools the children attend through grade 12, but one of the options we offer is college.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if we should eliminate that if we're only interested in going through grade 12.
We really could.
And,
Yeah.
and then later at the bottom of the question 2, when it talks about the trade-offs for changing the start date, which I imagine would be earlier, it lists that one of the trade-offs might be extending the school year later, which I don't think would actually be the case. It would actually be ending earlier.
Well,
it's at the bottom of number 2.
one of the options would be earlier and later.
Are you looking at end of school?
No, so the question number 2, the paragraph that starts out, keep in mind that District
Yep.
64 must legally change. And it talks about the trade-off of starting earlier would extend the school year later, which I don't think would be something we would imagine doing.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Oh, you know,
And then later on, there's an opposite of that is stated appropriately.
I bet, if I had to guess, this language came from the last time you guys did a calendar survey, which was in
Here
the
it is.
context of people wanting us to start later. And that was in the context of heat and lack of air conditioning. And so this paragraph works really well for that. So my bet is it probably needs to be rethought in the context of this one.
So it's 2 to mirror 8. I have it. We can talk about it first thing tomorrow, Bernadette. That's why we held it, to make sure we didn't miss anything. So thank you. We will get that corrected. And it'll go live tomorrow. We will send the community as well as the staff of School Messenger with a link directly to the survey. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks for picking that up, Bob. Next item on the agenda is the regarding policy 7:60 and utilization of residency checks. There's a need to clarify board policy and to bring it in line with the state law. There needs to be a review of policy 760. I don't know if we necessarily need to rewrite it, but maybe we could add to it, rewrite it in its totality, or certainly review it and renew it. So, Dr. Hines, if you'd like to start off with this.
So as you know, each year we have, let's say, for example, with kindergarten, we have parents come in to prove residency. We don't do a ton of residency checking outside of that time. There's certain documents people need to bring, but it's not comprehensive and it's not required on an annual basis. So as you may or may not know, District 207, just this last year, started doing annual residency checks on all of its students. So before they start school, parents have to prove that they are still residents in District 207.
I think that's actually been going on for several years.
Oh, see, I thought it was
No,
last year. Oh,
it's
so
been several
multiple
years.
years. I apologize.
Like a-
So this board knows that we had one particular instance where a community member called into question whether another member of their community actually was still a resident of our district, and we had a conversation about that, which led us to really saying we need to look at our policy to make sure it reflects exactly how we want to proceed with residency check. It should really be spelled out, and everything that's in this policy we should be comfortable enacting. According to the Illinois School Code, you have a two-pronged test to be considered a resident. It really is where the kids lie their head and kind of where they call home, and there has to be that intentionality. So for the case we were talking about, we had families that owned a home. It's under construction. They're not residing there right now, but they still own the home. So we need to make sure that our policy reflects that. And it doesn't. So that's part of one conversation we need to have, and another conversation we need to have, and it could be tonight or at a later meeting, is do we want to do what 207 has done and really require our community on an annual basis to prove that they still live in district?
Well, I think the first answer is we must comply with state law. And if state law through school code stipulates the two-pronged approach, I think our board policy must conform to that. The second piece of that is I was hopeful that administration can give us some recommendations on how to go about verifying residency, and of course with those recommendations some idea of what technology would be utilized, what cost potentially would be involved if the administration's gotten that far down the road with this yet.
Well, Becky, we have talked about what it would entail in terms of on an annual basis checking all of our families.
Well, first let me talk about how we currently do it. If when you register your student in this district, we do a pretty thorough validation that you live in the district. And if you own your own home, then those are the students who we never go back and ask that question again. If you are renting a home or an apartment or a condo in the district, you are tagged that you lease, and we make them validate every year an update of the lease that it has been extended, and when they update the lease, we have started asking for copies of utility bills to make sure that, because leases can be downloaded pretty quickly off the webpage, and that the utility bills mirror the lease agreement. And if the utilities are included in the lease, then we tend to ask for a copy of a canceled check to validate that they actually paid the rent that the lease says they do. So we tend to do that every summer for people who are leasing. Periodically, we will get phone calls. I got one today that it's questionable that student X lives at this address. That it's come from multiple sources that they moved out of the district last spring and there's no intention of them moving back. So we will start looking at that. That call came late today. So we will start looking at that tomorrow and start pulling the strings to figure out if that child actually lives in that house or if there's another family there. We, when it's questionable, we use the services of a private investigative firm to do that background. In the olden days, I used to go knocking on doors myself. Police departments have recommended that I no longer do that. So that for safety purposes that we secure the services and have outside agencies. So, but if we were going to go through a process where we were going to validate all residency in the district, and I'm just going to speak to the way I did it in a former school district that I worked with, that we would set up, and it happened to be a K-12 district, so we used the high school because it was the biggest building. Here we would use the middle schools. And we would set up stations for all particular buildings, and people would have to come in on various nights during the week. We set up a couple of weekends so that we could make it convenient, but it would be a labor-intensive process. and not only labor intensive, but those are the staff that you would be using to do this work would be hourly employees, so that would be, there'd be some overtime as a result of this. So it can be done. It needs to be well thought out and well planned. Dr. Hines and I have had some conversations about perhaps you do it when they come in as kindergartners. Maybe you do it at 3rd grade, and then you do it as the 5th graders are entering 6th grade again, so that there are multiple ways you could approach this and get at the same information.
One of the things Dr. Wallace over at the high school said is, although it is labor and somewhat there's a cost attached to that labor, when you think about how much we spend to educate each child that is in this district, upwards of $14,000.
It's over 15.
You know, it's a small, I thought it was like 14,800. It's a lot. So he said they've wound up catching a lot of families that are getting a 207 education and not contributing to the tax base that,
Right, and
that
the
helps
cost could
educate it.
be much greater if that one student causes you to open a new section and you have to hire
Correct.
additional staff and everything, so it could have a huge impact just even with one student.
So that was a driving force at 207 in terms of their decision to require annual residency checks.
Is there anything we could do online as we move to the fee paying this year? Maybe entering some kind of an account number for a ComEd or something, or?
I don't
we-
know what I'd
can
validate
we-
that against.
Part of the live check is they have to bring in, documentation, which Dr. Wallace also said a lot of people literally just turned around when they realized that an actual person was going to be checking their paperwork. He
Right.
said they had just groups of people throughout their days that just turned around and didn't even approach anybody once they found out what they needed to have validated by
The
an
key,
employee.
the key to this is, according to board policy, is that once a child starts matriculating, we have to keep them in our schools for the remainder of the year. So this will have to be all done prior to school starting.
Unless you find out that they entered our schools for the purpose of claiming that they reside within our district for the sole purpose of gaining educational services. That actually constitutes fraud. And I don't know if it's a misdemeanor or,
Yeah, well, I think it also, according to the booklet we got the last time, says that if we mistakenly allowed someone to attend on a tuition-free basis, so to speak, that we can't collect back tuition from them, but I think that we can
Going
on a
forward.
go-forward basis. And then I imagine our plan beyond that then would be not to allow enrollment for future years. I'm definitely in favor of having residency checks. I don't know what the right balance is, whether it's certain years, if it's every year, but if, to help make sure that we're just educating the students that are within our district that we're supposed to be responsible for, and that, right now, effectively, if someone enrolls in kindergarten, we've got a 9-year school attendance time that we're only checking that first year. And it seems like we have a bias at the moment really to checking people who are in apartments, but we're not doing any checks on homeowners at all.
I mirror that. I think that we should be doing some validation at some point, certainly more than just at kindergarten. I'd like to investigate different options other than having folks sitting there and bringing in bills. There's got to be, in this day and age of electronics, there's got to be some tie-in with city government. There's got to be some form, and I don't know the answer to this, but I would think that there's some easier way to validate somebody's residency. And I don't know, but that seems to be, I'd like, I don't know how much you probably already looked into this. Knowing both of you, I'm sure you looked into this. But I'd like to explore some options that might be present and come back with a plan.
John, you've been
before we
waiting.
move on,
Yep.
yeah,
I've been
I feel
watching
like
you.
we're talking the
Yeah.
details of something that I think is potentially a really bad idea. What District 207 does right now is a pain in the neck. for the average parent. And what we're talking about here is conceivably even more of a pain in the neck for the average parent, because here we're talking about dragging people in. So we're looking at taking an hour or two of every family's time every year with about 4,000 kids. You know, what is that going to be? You know, 4,000, 6,000, 8,000 person hours. If I value that at even $10 an hour, we're asking the community to spend $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 to prove that their kids belong in school. So my question would be, do we think we are going to find enough kids who don't belong in school? And I mean kids that we currently don't find using the existing method, because it's not like we do nothing right now. We do stuff. So the question is, are you going to find enough kids who are illegally attending our schools now that it is worth the burden that you're going to put on every family in District 64? Not to mention the cost that you're going to put on the taxpayers in District 64 from the overtime and the other things you need to do. So the mere fact that theoretically somebody may be attending and that every once in a while we catch somebody, to me is not a good enough justification to do this. So, I'm happy to listen to a recommendation if it comes back. But for me, the most interesting part of the recommendation is not going to be whether this is electronic or, how it's done. The most interesting part is going to be why you think that you're going to catch enough people that I should impose this kind of paperwork burden on everybody in District 64. With District 207, and right now I do not have to come in for District 207 every year, but what I do have to do is I have to take their form. I see, Bob, you've got a copy of it.
This is actually ours.
Oh, that one's ours. Okay, well, there's one for District 207, and I've got to go through and I've got to pull the various documents out of my files each year, take them to work, copy them, staple it all together in a package, make sure my daughter really drops it off in the office and doesn't forget it by the deadline. And even that takes maybe half an hour to an hour of my time. Not a big deal, but when you multiply that over the population of the entire district, it's not insignificant. So I'd like us to at least pass that speed bump before we go down this road.
So, John, when you say burden, I'm kind of just looking at this as like, I'd have to show that, some sort of residency, and I have to show a utility bill, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe I'm naive about it, but I'm not seeing it as a huge burden.
No, it's not a huge burden for any individual family. But as the way it was just described, it actually involved you're going to pull those documents, you're going to make a copy of them, and you're going to drive them to your local middle school on a particular evening. And you're going to park your car, you're going to go in and you're going to show a person those documents. They're going to look at them, say, yes, you're right, Dan, that is a utility bill. There you go. Your kid can be in school. And all
Would be
told,
copying them to make sure we had them in our file.
yeah, and all told, it's going to take you at least an hour to do that. And, what I'm saying is if you're going to ask 4,000 different families or 3,000 or whatever the number of unique families it is to do that, and you're going to ask them each to spend an hour, I think you need to put some mental dollar value on that hour. And I'd say $10 an hour is what they're talking about raising minimum wage to in Illinois. And so if I take 4,000 people and I make them each spend an hour and I value that at $10 an hour, that's $40,000. So that's maybe 3 kids' tuition. And so the question is, are we going to find 3 kids who don't belong here for that level of effort? And if we don't think we are, then I don't think we should be passing this burden on to our community.
I think there's a belief that we
do.
would very easily catch.
We have
Well, and if that's the case, I guess that's the information I would want to see.
And I
Kids
guess,
will often tell their teachers, because they're sweet and innocent, that
Right.
We
But
don't
but
live
but
in
also
Denver.
remember that part of the reason that you think you've found those people is you're finding them already. And if you're finding them already, then we don't need this extra burden.
well,
But some of them we're not finding through the district's efforts necessarily.
Yeah.
But
The
I think
community
the other thing is with District 207, John, and thinking about the burden thing is that there you just drop an envelope off at a desk and walk away. So there's not this concept of having nights that people come and somebody's going to check the documents and you're going to wait there. So I think that there is a structure evidenced locally that that burden thing could be much less where someone could just drop it off and then it receives the checking.
Yeah,
In response to John, I appreciate your comments because I don't want to throw good money after bad. And I've heard a lot of good things tonight too. But I think that we're not going to know the extent of the utilization until we finally do this on a district-wide basis. And even if we found 10, if we did it the first year and we found 10 folks who are not supposed to be in the district, I would expect those 10 to be eliminated at the end of the first year. But you have, what's to say 3 years down the road you don't have 10 new ones? So it seems to me that you have to continue to monitor it. I think that the way you monitor it becomes important at that point. So the first concept is there a need to do this? And I certainly appreciate your comments, but I don't think we know the need until we actually do it to find out what the need might be. And then at that point, you can modify it and string it out to any degree that you want.
And I got to say, if that's all we've got, if all we've got is we have no idea whether we need to do this until we actually make everybody go through all this trouble, then I'm a no vote on
Well,
that.
yeah, and I would be too, but I think we have a pretty good idea. I think that knowing that District 207, if that's true, that they've caught a sizable number of people, that doesn't give us an exact number, but I think that gives us a good idea that we have some.
And that's an only four-year program school also.
Right, and so my guess is that we're gonna have at least that many, so that it would pay
If not
for
more,
itself,
yes.
if not more. And then it would dissuade others from doing that, and so at a certain point, we might not need to do this.
That's my whole
Or as
point.
frequently. Or in the meantime, we can find a cheaper, easier, faster way to do it. And I'd say, if that hour of work is to get a hamburger, okay, maybe it's not worth it, but to get a $15,000 or a $30,000 or $45,000 benefit, that hour of making copies, easily worth it.
Yeah,
What
well,
if
we
I
should
sig-
say 4,000 hours of making copies.
No, I'm
'cause
saying
it's-
for the parents.
Well, and so am I.
No,
You know,
you're
if we've
talking
got
about
four.
in aggregate, I understand.
Yeah, right,
I'm
but
saying for
the
each parent,
right.
it's worth it.
Yeah, but each parent's 1 hour is not going to save the district $15,000.
No, I know. You were suggesting that the time spent for each
Yeah.
parent was kind of cumbersome.
Well, it's got to be included in the calculus.
Yeah, and I'm saying that each parent's involvement of an hour in order to get that much benefit from an education, okay, I don't think that that's much of a very cumbersome at all. It may be cumbersome for the taxpayers to pay for all of that if it doesn't get a benefit. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But again, I go back to, I think there's at least a pretty good hypothesis that we're going to at least recoup those dollars.
Well, it's worth talking to District 207. The question I would ask them is, how do you know that these are people that you found because you're checking every year, as opposed to the kids you found when you were only checking once? The other difference between us and District 207 is I think we tend to find out a little more from the students directly than District 207 may. So we may be a little differently situated in our ability to find out about these things with our current system.
And I think the other thing is that, the savings, if it costs, we've got a number for what we say it costs to educate a student. I mean, if there was one student that we discovered shouldn't be in the district, and, you go through all this, and say our cost is, what is it, $14,000 per student or something?
14,800.
I mean, it may not be the case that we save $14,000 because of one student. That's, if you just remove one student, that's just our average cost. It'll change our average. It would be more, there is going to be an impact whether you're buying a Chromebook, doing other stuff. But I just wouldn't want anybody to think that, you find 5 kids and you've saved, $75,000 or something. That might not be the case. It would be the case if you could go down a section in a grade or something like that. But I think we still have a responsibility, I think, that we should be educating the students in our district, and we shouldn't be educating students that belong in other districts.
I also think the value of knowing just in general how many students are using our services for free who aren't paying for it would be a highly valuable thing to know.
Like any
Not
other,
the main reason, but it would be a great benefit.
like any other project, I guess I would be interested in the administration's recommendation, because you are the expert, so I'm gonna defer to you in this. But I do think John brings up a very valid point that I ought to see a forecast in there of how many students you expect are going to find next. You're going to find next year based on what you found now, based through your research, because then we can at least have some sort of an idea. What do you expect to find? And then over time, should this be implemented, we can evaluate its success, right? We can say, well, we were expecting to catch this. We can track this. I'd really like this monitored. If we burden everyone once or twice, and then we find we're not finding any value in this, I'd really like to eliminate it immediately. The other thing, though, and it was sort of the reason the conversation got started, I know that we have this intent clause, and I'm not certain whether the school code puts it as an and or an or. You say it's a two-pronged approach?
It's an and.
It's an and. So one of the unintended consequences is something that was discussed last time when we were together, which is if you go to build a brand new house on your own lot and you just don't happen to rent in Park Ridge, but you rent one block away because that's where your in-laws are or whatever, you have 60 days to build your house or you start paying tuition. I, as a district, think we ought to think about the consequences of that. I think it encourages people not to build new homes. I don't know if that's the decision-making factor, but nonetheless, it is encouraging them not to. And that EAV is precious to me, right? Because that's the only time we can beat the T-tell is when we actually have people build new homes. As a school board member, I really want people to do that, quite frankly. So I'm not sure if legal counsel can advise us as to whether or not we can have some sort of process by which we can say if there is intent that I'm going to reside in that home within a certain period of time, then maybe we make an exception, or maybe they sign something and you agree to pay us back if they don't. But I think that ought to be looked at as well, because I do think 60 days to build a house in Park Ridge, just having gone through it once in my life, is not even close to reasonable. And I don't think I want to discourage people from doing it.
May I clarify, though? It's how the school code reads is that if you, what people really need to know is that if you're going to gut your house and build an addition, you need to do it after the first day of school. Because once the first day of school has started, now hold on, once the first day of school has started, you've got the year, you can stay. Then, the way the school code reads and our board policy says, then there's an additional 60-day window that you need to reside, you have to be considered a non-tuition paying resident. So you're really giving people 14 months.
And I still think that's unreasonable. In Park Ridge, that's actually ridiculous to presume you can, from soup to nuts, get something done sometimes. Because, I mean, I'm just telling you.
Are you talking about from the village perspective and permits and that whole process?
You went 18 months.
I went 18 months. I can tell you.
That's not unusual.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is I think we as a district ought to come up with something that has this covered, because the law right now is rather harsh. If you just don't miss that day because your contractor, or whatever reason, you couldn't line people up, I agree before the first day of school. I understand what you're saying, but that's not always the way the world's going to work for us. So I think I'd love to hear from, if the rest of the board does, I don't want to direct as a single board member, but I'd love to hear a recommendation from you about something reasonable where it's like, look, if you let us know by such and such a date, we're going to keep an eye on it, we're going to make sure there's progress, and maybe after 18 months or 24 months, then you start to pay tuition or something like that. I just don't think that the current policy is reasonable, and if we can legally change it, I'd like to see us investigate it, but that's just one.
And I think that 60 days is our district's thing. It's not a state mandated thing.
Correct.
So it says you can have a policy like that,
Yes.
and we've obviously, as a district, chosen to have that up to this point.
The last time we updated that policy, we put that clause in.
I don't like the policy simply because, or the law, whatever it is, that forces you to basically start your life plans the day after school begins, when life doesn't always happen on that calendar.
Or rent or bunk with somebody within our boundary. That's also the intent. It's an option within the law. Or build your house, let it take 16 months, 18 months, 24 months. And if you move somewhere else during that time, you enroll your kids in that school system.
Yeah, see,
Now that is obviously, as a mom, if you've got my mom hat on, that's that's an issue. I understand why you wouldn't want to have that disruption for your students, but those are all options that families have to weigh when they make these decisions.
And I guess I would just say, as representing the community, I don't know that I have constituents that would say that's what they're hoping for out of their school district. I think they would rather say, look, I get those are options. I don't want a kid going to Edison Park because his in-laws live there. There's so many people in this community. they live real close, they grew up around here, there's so many options for this. I just think we ought to look at a more appropriate policy for this district if the rest of the board thinks.
I'm
Scott,
wondering
I
if,
agree.
I'm wondering if the first step might be, and you may have already done this and I missed this, but, you know, find out from Terry, is this a hard and fast interpretation, or not even interpretation, hard and fast, written in stone rule, or is there any play with this particular wording that we might be able to work around this and craft our own within some parameters that the state has set forth? I'd like to know that.
I agree, no, I agree 100% with Scott here on this, especially if these families who are building a house continue to pay taxes on that, so they are buying into the system just like they were before. So if they were to move out of the district, they're paying for something that they're not getting, and that's just as unfair as the other way around. So-
I'm happy to check with council again, but I will tell you that when we had administratively our legal boot camp this summer in July or August, whenever that was, it seems like an eon ago, and I'm looking at the document that was provided to us by Jay Kranig, and elements of residency, number 1, bodily presence in that place, and in bold, and the intention of remaining in that place. My notes from that session were 2 elements. You know,
Yeah.
so I can go back to Terry. It's quick. She always takes our calls and confirm. But this is from this summer from legal counsel, built into the administrative boot camp that we all participated
Although I'm not sure that's really the question for Terry, because I don't think the question is, what does residency mean? I think the
Do we
question
have
is,
wiggle?
if a school district wants
Right.
to let these people, resident or not, attend tuition free, is a school district allowed to do that?
Do we have the
And,
wiggle room?
and maybe
Yeah,
to
that
add,
I think's the question.
and maybe to add on to John's, would be, can that situation exist where the student would not be resident in the district for the entire school year? Because I think that's a possibility. You know, so much of this talks about we could, you know, you could allow someone to come into your district at some point in the year and they can pay tuition, you know, up until that point. But I don't think there's anything I see that talks about, well, what if the student's not in the district at all for the year? Because that could potentially happen if somebody starts a project in August and they're not done by May or June. You know, how can you deal with that? Because it seems like there's a lot of, if the child's a resident and then they leave during the school year, they remain in our schools if the parents wish to do so on a tuition-free basis. But they, you know, and we allow them to come in within the 60 days if they pay tuition up until that point. But I think we need to address the other issue also.
Okay.
So there's 2 components to this. The first would be get some verification on this residency issue. And the second is the validation aspect of it. And I think there's a consensus here that some sense of validation should occur. We don't know necessarily how often or what form that might take. Perhaps you'd be able to put some heads together, gather some information. There has to be a simplified way. I got to believe that there's a simplified way with electronics available today. It has to be paper. And what the frequency might be and what the effect of that would be to the district operations. So,
Tony, let me just clarify. I don't believe there is a consensus that more validation than is done today needs to be done. If by consensus you mean we all think that. I am skeptical that anything beyond the validation that we do currently needs to be done. I'm happy to listen to recommendation and reasons why, but as I sit here, I don't want to be part of any consensus that more validation needs to be done.
it was my impression that there was consensus to have more validation. And I guess we should ask, does anybody here?
Well, I guess that depends what you mean by consensus, Tony. If 6-1 is consensus, then you've got consensus, I
No,
suppose.
I didn't mean that, John. I
But-
said, what I mean is, we should go around and we should ask who is in favor of pursuing that aspect of it. And if the majority feels that it is a waste of time, then we will drop that.
And I have no problem with Lori doing a recommendation. In other words, I'm not quite sure what you're asking, Tony. If you're asking whether I'm in favor of more validation right now, my vote would be no. If you're asking whether I have a problem with the superintendent making a proposal, absolutely not. I'm happy to listen to a proposal.
I don't want to waste the superintendent's time pursuing something that there's going to be a no vote on and we're going to drop it. So I think the board has to collectively decide, do we want to do the one validation at the kindergarten level as it is existent, or are we going to do more validations during the K to 8th grade time frame that the students are in the district?
My to-do list, as we were going through this conversation, was twofold. I was going to talk with Terry in terms of what latitude we have as a district to write a policy that maybe doesn't lockstep with the two-pronged school code requirements for residency. That's number one. Number two was, and kind of to this point, investigate the different options for checking residency. What's done, how frequently, what would it entail, and have a variety of options to bring before the board.
If
And
administration feels
if
that they would
administration.
find enough to warrant it.
And I think administratively, we've had enough conversations to say that it's something we think we would like to, dig into a little, because we do believe that there are kids here that shouldn't be. But we have options, and I don't know if any formal presentation or a formal recommendation has yet been made, but we wanted to, engage the board in a conversation to say, do we want to consider doing this yearly? Do we want to do it, as Becky said, we automatically do it in kindergarten. We're going to check when they leave second grade, because, kind of that primary, intermediate, and then before the middle school years. So I can ask neighboring communities. I can, get information.
And to that point, I appreciate all that, but I certainly wouldn't want you to do that if the board, if 5 members of this board say, we're not going to change anything than what we're doing already.
I appreciate that.
And I haven't heard it.
Right, I don't want to do work if the board's thinking they're not going to
And I haven't
vote.
heard anything that makes me believe that's the case, Tony.
Okay.
So far, I think I'm the only person who's raised any concerns, and I've said I'm willing to listen to a recommendation.
So are those
So,
my two items
Yeah.
moving forward, my marching orders? All right, thank you for clarifying. Okay.
Next item would be Becky. We have an action item discussing the tax levy.
At the last board meeting, we spent, a good 30 minutes reviewing the tax levy, the process, what our intent was to levy. And tonight we're asking you for to pass a resolution that allows us to move forward with the process and be in compliance with all the rules and regulations about extending and asking for taxes of the county clerk. The document that you have in your packet tonight is the same document that you received at the last board meeting. We didn't review this in its totality, but what the presentation did is take what's in this document and hopefully made it a little bit clearer than all the legalese that's in here. But again, we're asking tonight for the authority to publish on December 4th the notice of intent to levy in the local newspapers. And we're asking for 4.9% in the capped funds, or a total of 4.6 when you consider the debt service fund. When we built the budget, as I said at the last board meeting, that we had budgeted based on all funds 1.7. That's what we think we'll receive. But you ask for more than you anticipate receiving for the sole purpose of being able to collect all the tax dollars that you are entitled to. I want to say this again because when people get their tax bills and they call and they said, well, I thought it could only go up by X. The district's extension, the dollars that we're entitled to, are limited by PTEL. It's not the individual taxpayer's property bill that is limited by that. So we are asking again for the authority. The resolution outlines by fund where we're asking for the money, and this will be published, as I said, on December 4th in a local paper.
Are there any board questions on this particular item? Any concerns? And if not, are there anybody Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to make a comment on this action item prior to voting?
I would just add that this also, the resolution that you passed tonight, puts in place a public hearing at the December board meeting at 7:15 for you as a board to take public comment on this topic. And if they have questions, they certainly can call, as the newspaper publication says.
Yeah, on the night of the vote. Not hearing any comments, I would take a motion on this.
I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, School District 64 estimate the aggregate property tax levy for 2014 to be 4.6% greater than the 2013 extension. I further move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64 approve the attached resolution number 1128, Truth in Taxation Law Resolution.
Second?
Aye.
Okay. Bob, why don't we start with you?
Aye, yes. Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've been saying that for so many years, you changed the word.
Keeping you on your toes.
All right, let me scroll down here a little bit. Still getting the hang of this. The next item will be the discussion of the interim session 2014. Dr. Lopez is not here. Dr. Heinz, would you like to discuss this?
I will do my best to deliver this report, probably not as articulately as Dr. Lopez would have. But I am here to report on how summer school went this last summer. So the 2014 Worlds of Wonder, it had 932 students attend the program. Our program was scheduled for 6 weeks. We offer 2 13-day sessions. Our K-3 enrollment was 1,250 students. Our 4-7 enrollment was 920 students. 14% of our overall enrollment were students scheduled to take remedial classes to kind of slow the summer regression and then fall recoupment time. And 69% of students that participated in summer school did enrichment. Overall, Dr. Lopez said, looking historically backwards, enrollment is relatively stable with our Worlds of Wonder program. Revenues collected, because we do like this to be a cost-neutral program. We collected revenues $237,470, and expenses totaled $239,543, resulting in a deficit of $2,073, which is not typical. Dr. Lopez did say that we had a number of students where fees were waived based on need. Is that correct, Becky? Well, she didn't say based on need. She said fees were waived, and I'm assuming it was based on students that had a free or reduced option. I was just curious if you knew for sure.
I don't know for sure,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So I'll leave it as she wrote it. Tuition was waived for a small group of students, and then there was a small increase in supplies. She believes moving forward, the program will revert back to operating within its budget. So that is the report on the 2014 summer program.
Can I
Questions?
Can I ask a question,
Okay.
Lori? Could you just share thoughts on, I know there's some number of students who are outside of District 64 who participate in this program, and just share thoughts on why we do that. And I know this is a break-even program financially, but I'm just asking the question. that's
I
all.
would be venturing a guess because this summer school ended right around the time I arrived, but I think really it's just tuition. It's self-sustaining, and as long as we have space for students, we place our kids, I know, first, and if there's room, we let other kids come and have that wow Worlds of Wonder experience. Anyone else that's been here through summer school have any other ideas? If not, I can have, I'll ask you to
Bernadette
just.
stepping forward, or?
Bernadette's going to take a go at it.
Well, also, the other students within our community that attend non-public schools that are able.
Oh,
then
there you
to
go. See?
So it casts a broad net to St. Paul the Cross, Mary Seat of Wisdom, that kind of thing as well.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
On Appendix A6, there was a recommendation for summer interim session 2015, which also recommended the hiring of a special ed principal.
Mm-hmm.
That cost was not included in the tuition estimates. So would that not automatically put us in the red next year? Becky, is that cost, I believe it's stated in there that cost is not included.
Principal for the special ed students, our special needs students, their participation in summer school is required. And so that's not part of the Worlds of Wisdom cost, because those are programs above and beyond what we do for them.
Is all of it or some of it, Becky? Because I thought when I read this, it was that some of it's subsidized, some of it's not, that, you know, a portion of it's paid.
And I believe, and I'm sorry, I know Jane Boyd cannot be here tonight, but if I'm not mistaken, also to get reimbursed for the state for part of that cost, it cannot be included. That the only way it can be is outside of that cost, otherwise the state won't reimburse.
So just so I understand, the special education section of the summer session is not part of the tuition fees, is that right?
Correct. If it's required that they attend because of their IEP, then we can't charge tuition because of that.
So that's the ESY, that's extended school year, that's what we call it for special ed students. Because that classification of student really would suffer from that summer regression and an increased recoupment time in the fall.
Now, without knowing the full job description, where does Jane and Vasiliki fall into this? Are they part of the governorship of the special ed program for the summer? Would they participate in the role of principal then?
Not in, no? Mm-mm.
No.
So who we've typically used, and that doesn't mean we'll use this person going forward, we've typically used Nancy Jensen. She's one of our, we have 3 special ed facilitators. She's one of our special ed facilitators, and she serves as the special ed summer school principal for an additional stipend because she's on a teacher contract. Anything else? Okay. No. So that is the report in terms of summer school. Any questions regarding summer school? No? Okay.
I believe we have this is an agenda item for next month.
Mhm.
Yep. Next topic, Joel.
Wait a minute, before we move off, have we moved off both the report
No, that
on
was
last year's
A5,
summer
now we're on
school
A6.
and
Recommendations
coming
for this
summer
year.
school? Okay.
So the next one, A6, has to do with recommendations for summer interim session 2015. So it's going to look very similar to the program that we have each year that we intend to operate, the Worlds of Wonder program, to provide quality interim educational experience for students. It is always the goal to do so within budget. As I stated earlier, this program typically is a self-sustaining, self-funded program. Change in terms of location based on some planned facility work that we will have at Washington and Lincoln. We will be shifting Worlds of Wonder at the K-3 level to Franklin, and to the 4-7 for the 4-7 students to Emerson. In terms of leadership and how we ensure that we have administrators covering summer school, we use our 2 assistant principals at the middle school level who are 12-month employees to oversee it's a shared kind of responsibility overseeing summer school. While that's easy for them to kind of oversee while they're here in the summer, where they really have an uptick in the work is all the preparation that goes into getting summer school ready to run smoothly while they're doing their assistant principal duties in the spring. So that's why the 2 of them kind of tag team everything from getting registration ready and working with the teachers to make sure the curriculum and everything is ready. And then they also tag team the days in the summer while they're trying to do all the summer prep to get their own school years up and running. So that'll continue to be our assistant principals. We will hire a principal to oversee the K-3 Worlds of Wonder at Franklin. And as we have in the past, we will have a facilitator or another administrator oversee the summer school programs located at Jefferson and Emerson School. Our dates, again, we will offer 2 sessions, each 13 days in length, with the first session kicking off on Tuesday, June 16th, and going through July 1st, with no school, summer school on Friday, July 4th to observe the holiday. Session 2 will kick off on July 6th and end on July 22nd. Let's see.
All right.
We're going to, just really quickly, Lori is working to kind of review current course offerings and to make any changes that she deems, necessary. I think in years past, we've had a lot of the same programs because they're very popular. And if we got rid of them, we'd have probably a real problem on our hands. So we're just going to make sure that we have the right programs in place. We will send home our brochure as we typically do mid-February. Hold registration first for our residents, March 2nd through April 17th. And then from April 18th to the 29th, we accept late registrations for an additional fee, and for students that live outside the district. We discontinue registration May 30th until walk-ins, and we discontinue registration from May 30th until walk-in registration on June 15th, and registration then reopens June 16th when space is limited. We allow additional kids to come in. And we're keeping the cost the same. It's $100 per class. It actually consists of last year's fee, and it's a decrease of $5 from 2013. So it's going to be more similar than different, it looks like. And the next steps, we ask for you, and there's something here, Tony, for the board to approve this plan moving forward so Dr. Lopez and company can begin moving on summer school.
If I had one question, I think it's a wonderful program. I think it's a real asset to the district. I just wonder that we're really skimming it close, and I would like this to always operate. I mean, almost never have a risk that we're in the red. Yeah. I know a couple of years ago it was $105 for a number of years, and then we reduced it last year. We went into the red, and it's such a wonderful program. I'm just wondering, should we go back to where we were so that we're making sure, I'm not looking to make a ton of money off the program, I'm just wondering, should we make sure, especially with salaries going up, right, because those are going up at a certain percentage, we're not really covering like electricity and stuff like that in here. I'm just wondering if we ought to think about being just a little bit, more fair with ourselves.
Well, and in fact, I've had a similar concern in looking at this. And in fact, there are a couple of line items in here where expenses are projected to drop, and that surprised me. And so I guess one of my questions for Dr. Lopez would be, why she thinks those line items will drop. And for instance, the 3 line items I'm wondering about are the teacher line items, where she has teachers dropping from 50 1/4 FTEs, or 50 1/4 positions to 45.5. For TAs, she has those dropping from 29.5 back to 21. Those are big dollars. Between the two of those, that's $20,000 or $30,000, my bet is. And if you had to add that onto the expense side, you would run at quite a loss. And so in fact, you'd probably have to not only go back to $105, you might even have to go to $110. So I guess my question would be, can we figure that out, why we think those expenses are going to drop? And if we don't have a really good reason for why we're sure those are going to drop this year, I'd probably be with Scott and suggest that we set the tuition at least back at the 105, if not at 110, just to make sure we really do break even.
So since Dr. Lopez is not here, let me bring this information back to her, have her, unless, Becky, you have a reason? Okay. So since she's not here, and she didn't know until just today that she wasn't going to be here, I will bring these questions back to her. We'll bring this back to you in December, and then it'll still allow us, if you approve it then, to stick with our timeline in terms of moving forward to get everything rolling. Does that seem reasonable?
It's very reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just agreeing, I think, with both of you that whatever the administration wants to do with this, in order, but I think if we can have a consensus that we don't want to lose money with this.
Yeah.
We don't have to gain money, but as long as you're sure that you got the numbers right, okay, fine, great.
Yeah.
But that's important to us.
At its worst, it has to
We
be
want it to be
even.
cost control.
Yeah, I agree.
We're risk averse on this one.
Yeah. We don't want to be grumpy.
Yeah.
And sorry
Scratch.
about blending A5 and A6. I feel like I'm looking at a telescope through this, on this computer. I don't have a mass of papers in front of me to figure out where I am
They
and
give
where
you a
I'm
gold
going.
star. You're doing very well.
This is
Board
hard.
meeting number 2.
This is hard working off of this computer, I gotta tell you. I'm not used to this at all.
Not to open a sore wound from the technology thing, but if you get an iPad, you can just kind of go that.
There goes your budget.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that will be coming back in December. We can finish up this conversation. Will that affect Dr. Lopez implementing or initiating anything?
No, because Appendix 6 was one we toyed with. Remember, if you remember
Yes.
when we were setting the agenda,
I thought it
maybe
was
not
gonna be
even going to
December
have it
anyway.
on. That's what we were thinking, because we had talked about maybe not moving it, and she said, "No, let's give it a go." So
So what are
it'll
we?
be good to go in December, and we'll stick with the February timeline. We'll be fine.
Okay, so that'll work okay? I was gonna say, otherwise, I mean, for $5 or $10, could we just give the latitude
No,
and just
because we
tell you
don't
to
need to
move
have the
forward
brochures
and
out till
not, no need to
mid-February.
come back again?
We're good.
We're good.
Okay.
Yeah. So that does bring us up to Joel, and speaking about the chief school business official hiring update.
Sorry. Just here to provide the Board of Education a little background information on where we currently are at in the hiring process. The window closed for the open positions on November 3rd, as the memo stated. We did paper screening the following week. There were 39, sorry, Lori's giving me, can't hear me. There were 39 qualified applicants who applied for the position. We paper screened them and identified 7 that we wanted to move to a screening interview process. Our central office administrative team screened those 7 on November 11th. At that point, we are looking, there were 2 people identified as the strongest of that pool of 7 that we'll be moving and bringing in tomorrow for another round. And then after that, depending on how tomorrow goes, then Dr. Hines will have the latitude to meet with those individuals for final small group or individual meeting with them. And our hope is that somewhere in December we will identify finalists for the position. Obviously, we would be meeting and conversing with the Board of Education on compensation and other factors involved with that hiring, but that's just kind of where we are currently in the process. Again, our key is really, we're hopeful of the fact of identifying somebody here before the winter break.
And thank you, Vicki, for agreeing to serve as the board rep on this committee. We're going to interview our 2 final candidates tomorrow, and you'll be part of that. So thanks.
Thank you, Vicki, for doing that. Anybody have any comments or questions regarding that interview process?
I will say that although Becky will be extraordinarily hard to replace, we do have 2 nice candidates, 2 strong candidates, I think, that will have big shoes to fill, but they'll work to do it.
You'll still be on your computer, right?
Well, I know where to find her.
All righty. Next item is the audit report, and Brian, if you could lead us through this.
Okay, so I'm just going to walk through the results of our audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2014. So each year we're required to have an audit of our financial statements. This year the audit was performed by Klein Hall CPAs, an independent third party out of Aurora. To give the board a brief overview of the process, the audit gets conducted in 2 different stages, where the auditors come on site to the district office. The first stage usually happens in the spring. This year it was in March. They come out for a couple days, review our financial processes, as well as some of our internal controls, and do some planning. And then they come back again after our year ends, usually the last week of August, first week of September. And at that time, they're looking at the numbers that flow into our financial statements, and they also do some testing on our federal grants for compliance. The audit produces 3 primary end documents. 2 of them you have in your board materials tonight. Those are the financial statements themselves, as well as a set of required communication letters from the auditors. And the 3rd document is actually a summarized version of the financial statements in a state-specified format that goes directly to the Illinois State Board of Education. So all 3 of those documents are actually posted on our district website currently, so the public can view those as well. Those are under the business office's past financial information webpage. For purposes of tonight's presentation, I'm just going to walk through some of the comments and communications from the auditors. There's 3 primary documents that come from their office. The first one is within the financial statement document itself. It's the opinion letter that they write each year. This is basically the level of assurance that they're providing over our financial statements. And Klein Hall issued an unqualified opinion to District 64, as in previous years. And what that means is they're basically giving us the highest level of assurance they can that the numbers in our financial statements are true and accurate representations of our financial performance for the year. So that's the technical piece. The side letters that they issue show up in that required communication letters document at the end of your board materials. There's 3 separate letters. The first 2 are the most important ones because that's where they identify the types of items that they came across during their audit work. So letter number 1 is a report that describes any findings that they came across in their field work. And findings can be defined as one of 2 things. It could be an adjustment to some of the numbers in our financial statements, or it could be some type of deficiency in the district's processes or internal controls that may lead to a higher likelihood of an error being in the financial statements. Any findings that showed up in this letter would also go in the report that is presented to the State Board of Education. So the good news here is that District 64 didn't have any findings in 2013/2014, and that's actually the 3rd consecutive year that that's been the case. So we were obviously very pleased by that news. Letter number 2 is where the auditors get a chance to make any other minor recommendations that came up during their audit work, but may not have been as severe as something that warranted a finding or a specific deficiency. So this is just where they list any areas for our consideration that may be notes for the future or areas of improvement. The only item that the only recommendation they listed here was actually a finding that you may some of you remember from last year related to conducting a full appraisal of our property and equipment. And upon Becky and I reviewing the finding, we actually have the same response as last year in that there's 2 basic reasons why an appraisal may not be cost worthy at this time. And that is, 1, the physical cost of having an appraiser come out and review all of our existing buildings and equipment is not cheap. I mean, we had the last appraisal in 2011. The cost was approximately $15,000. The main thing the auditors are looking for here is, are the items in that appraisal document accurate enough to give them a good feel for what the cost of our capital assets are? Now, the way the district gets around that, not necessarily gets around it, but our current process is each year for audit purposes, we're going through the district's expenses related to buildings and equipment. We'll compile a list of those costs, send them to our appraisal company, and then they will issue an updated report in those in-between years of when we're having a full appraisal. So that keeps our records close enough in value to satisfy the auditors. The second reason for not going with an appraisal this year is our upcoming capital project work that we have going on with the field HVAC work and some of the other building enhancements we're going to be doing. If we were to do an appraisal now, within a year or 2, some of those values could be immediately out of date. It wouldn't really warrant us spending the money now. So it's one of those things where we're going to go ahead and finish up the capital work we're doing, reevaluate in a couple years whether it makes sense to do another full appraisal, and that would satisfy the auditors for that request. The typical industry standard, just to give you an idea, is most school districts are doing a complete appraisal about every 7 to 8 years, unless they're doing something drastic like building a new school building or something like that. So with the last one being in 2011, we're only about 3-4 years into the process right now with the current one. So that sums up the auditor's communications.
Hey, Brian, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
For that sort of appraisal thing, would that have any relevance at all if we had any sort of damage and insurance claims to have a more accurate value, or would that not even be taken into consideration by an insurance company? They would make their own assessments?
It would be taken into consideration, but we actually do a separate report specifically for insurance as well. Becky, are you familiar with the insurance piece?
Are the values that we have for insurance purposes are the district as a whole. So if we had a catastrophic event at Lincoln, the values that would hold for the replacement of Lincoln or the repairs for Lincoln would be the district as a whole's value, not just what Lincoln's property values are. Because we're insured up to a specific level for the district as a whole, and we're self-insured with a cooperative of almost 200 other school districts.
So does this appraisal we would do wouldn't have any impact on an evaluation of if we had damage, what the cost was the district should receive for replacement?
Actually, the insurance company only requires us to have our appraisal done every 10 years. And typically we do it 6 to 7 years. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just to wrap up, from the business office's standpoint, our audit went very smoothly this year. I think the feedback from the auditors was positive, and especially the lack of comments was nice. So at this time, I'd be happy to take any questions the board has.
Anybody? I have one, but anybody else? When I was looking through the schedules here, I was confused when I looked at the long-term debt, specifically the bond issues and the cost of the bonds. I'm on page 77. I don't know if everybody else has the same sequence as I do. But on page 77 under note 4, long-term debt, I understand that there was a carryover of the Emerson bonds that are still due, plus the field bonds. But what I wasn't aware of is the net OPEB obligation. What is that?
So the OPEB obligation is something that came around just a few years ago. It's a way of trying to conceptualize the future benefits that retirees could have. In our case, we allow retirees to stay on the district's insurance in some cases up until the age of 65. So with the new GASB that came around a few years ago, we then had to get an actuary to estimate for us what the true present value cost is of having those retirees on the insurance plan, as well as trying to fund costs for future retirees. So that's their way of trying to ballpark that cost as of today. It's really a very big estimate, but they're trying to, in District 64, it's not quite as large of a number as you may see at other districts, even though 2 million looks like a big number. Depending on the range and the number of benefits you offer, that number could get bigger.
Why was it included, however, in this category? That we did not take out a bond for this obligation?
No, it's required by GASB that we report this, and that's the category that because theoretically it's a long-term debt for the district, not debt that we've issued.
Gotcha.
And the only employees who can remain on our health insurance plan by state statute are our support staff who participate in the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. No teachers stay on our health insurance unless they choose COBRA and chose not to go into the teacher retirement health insurance, and then they would be limited to 18 months. But if a support staff person retired at age 55, they could actually stay on our plan for 10 years until they became 65 or Medicare eligible.
Okay, well, thank you for that, because I thought our bond expense went up by $2 million.
And it's probably a good thing that we are required to have this listed as a liability, because it increases transparency.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at an employment contract and we say, to an employee or to a union, if you work for us, we'll pay you now and we'll also give you this post-retirement benefit. It makes us account for those. Mm-hmm. And that way at least we know the dollar value of what we promised.
Well, the fact is that it's not a cost to the district because those people stay on our plan at their own cost.
And I guess that raises a question of whether we have a long-term asset recognized of the contributions that those employees are going to make.
I don't think so.
We would if they were contributing now towards that cost for the future. But because we operate more as a pay-as-you-go, so there's no actual cost to them until they've retired. So then it doesn't build in as an asset for the audit purposes in today.
So we have to put the debt on the books, but we're not allowed to put the future payments on the books.
Right, unless we were setting money aside for the future, which we're not at this point.
So it's conservative then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
No, actually, though, but I would just like to say thank you because I've worked for publicly traded companies and I have auditors myself. And to get a statement like this with no opinions, and I mean, I know how much work's behind the scenes. This looks like it's a slam dunk for you guys, or at least it seems to us like this. I just want to say I appreciate how much work's involved in this because I understand how much it is with the controls and everything.
Well, I remember my interview, Mr. Heidi, and this was a huge topic of conversation during my interview because at that point in time we had quite a few management letter comments that weren't very complimentary to the district. And so, yeah, as I move on to my next phase of my life, it makes me feel good that we've made these advancements in the last.
Yeah, congratulations. That's a great report.
Thank you for your work. Mr.
Yes.
Huffman.
Thank you.
He's in on this too.
Oh, no.
So, and thank you for this report. Very good.
And all
Nicely
your
delivered.
team.
All right, if no other comments, we move to the consent agenda. And prior to taking a motion on this, does anybody have any comments on any of the items located in the consent agenda?
I've got just a couple that I'll try to put Becky on the spot for. If I could just ask you if you are aware what these are. Just some of the expenses. So I'm just wondering, so there's on page 146 of our package here, so there's about over $10,000 that goes to Crafty Beaver for Emerson and Lincoln. You know, I know Emerson had some roof work done, but I didn't know what this was.
Actually, that's for our industrial, our woods program.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good. And then do you know, sort of on the next page, I noticed there's about $25,000 for Chromebooks. Is that sort of, you know, which would probably be about 80 Chromebooks or whatever? Is that sort of a replenishment of, you know,
Or was
damages?
that getting their
with
reserves
war?
up?
No, that actually is an order that was placed this summer to make sure that we had the quantity of Chromebooks and that we had some in reserves. I think if you'll recall, last spring we talked about having a
10%.
reserve, a contingency amount of Chromebooks. This is actually what that is.
Okay, great. And one last question. There was an item, it's a Pearson Inform subscription for over $17,000 for a year.
Sure.
I'm just curious what that is.
Pearson Inform is our data warehousing system, and that's an annual fee. I will tell you, it's something that Lori and I have been in conversation about. I think right now it's slightly underutilized, and we really are trying to work with the company as we really get more and more, starting with this year's new approach to math and how we're using data. I really want to build down a much more robust data warehouse where we can have all of our data from AimsWeb, from NWEA, stored within Inform and then easily accessed by teachers and administrators when we're talking about problem solving and determining if kids need intervention or CFC opportunities. It's good. It's used largely by Carrie Meredith and who works in Lori's department. But I think that there's more that we can do to capitalize on that amount and get the most bang for our buck.
Are you happy with that program?
I am. I mean, I think it's, again, we started using it in Skokie and we use it in a little more of a robust way, so I'm familiar with it from my previous experience, and it is something that we have opportunities, again, to better utilize moving forward. And it's on the list of things to continue to, you know, pick up how we're using it. But Pearson's, and it's a quality product. Yeah. very high quality.
That was my point. If we're going to pay for something like that,
Very high
are we
quality.
paying for the quality product?
Right now, it's a quality product that's being underutilized, so I want to bump up the use, and then it's not only a quality product, but it'll be appropriately utilized. So we're halfway there, maybe 75%.
Okay. Any other questions? I've got two. The tractor leasing agreement. Do we have tractors currently, or is this going to be something new?
This is part of our snow plowing equipment.
Yes.
And because last winter pretty much depleted all of our snow plowing equipment, and so we're replacing. We had.
When you say depleted, you mean they broke?
Oh, they were just abused and unusable and unrepairable going forward. Most of the equipment that we had was for household use, not really for industrial use. These two pieces of equipment will allow us to take the Emerson piece and do, which are sidewalks, which we're required to do, in a safe manner for our custodians instead of out there with small equipment and or shovels moving the snow, and do it in a more timely fashion so that we can clear the sidewalks for safe passage of students and any other pedestrian. Same thing at Lincoln. So we have one that will be used on the north side of the railroad tracks and one that will be used on the south side of the school. And we think this will actually allow us to be more proficient in the removal of snow.
Becky, what is the cost that is utilized per year in the maintenance of these smaller two-stage snow blowers or whatever have you versus these bigger items? I mean, what is the delta going to be, the added cost?
Oh, I'm not sure I have any response to that question right now.
All right. Okay.
But I will tell you the evaluation that was done by our maintenance staff who do grounds felt this piece of equipment would be more valuable than any other type of equipment that we could buy on behalf of the district.
And it'll obviously be utilized in all the buildings. It'll be
Absolutely.
utilized more than just sidewalks and.
And
as
during
much
the
as it
summer,
can be.
actually, it can be used to move wood chips, and it'll be used in multiple ways. So the grounds staff and the other maintenance staff who actually do some snow plowing are excited to have this type of equipment so that they actually do it more safely and reduce our workers' comp claims.
Okay.
What, for that, Becky, so for this equipment, if we're leasing it, if it breaks down or something, what happens then?
We are responsible for the maintenance of the equipment if we choose to return it in 5 years, or we could buy out the remainder of the lease, depending on how it holds up over 5 years. We are required to return it in pretty much the same condition that we was normal wear and tear. So if we inadvertently hit a telephone pole, not that I expect us to do that, then we would have to repair it so that we didn't return it with one great big dent in the equipment.
You know, one time many years ago, I leased a car thinking that it was going to be a better deal than buying it. And I almost paid twice when it was all said and done. So I learned a very great lesson at that time.
And I would agree with you on a personal vehicle. For this equipment, I don't believe that would be the case, because basically what we've taken is the cost and spread it out over 5 years instead of doing upfront costs right away.
Is there a purchase cost at the 5th year if we want to decide to buy it?
$1.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Fair market price.
And that answers my question. The final thing is.
If it's not working, I will give it back to them.
Yeah.
Oh, I won't. Somebody will.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. The final thing I'd like to discuss is the approval of policies from press issue 86. At our last meeting, I directed everybody to 2:220, and there was a footnote at the bottom, number 25, sentence was optional, and intra-board conflicts may escalate if the recording is used to confirm or dispute who said what. And this is in reference to individual board members may listen to verbatim recordings when that action is germane to their responsibilities. In the interest of encouraging free and open expression by board members during closed meetings, recordings of closed meetings should not be used by board members to confirm or dispute the accuracy of recollections. And in my thinking, I would, if we're deciding or discussing something and we want to know the full factual analysis of what we're talking about, I can't understand why you would want to disregard something that's going to give you the facts as to what was said and what wasn't said. At least in my way of thinking, it's a benefit, not a detriment. I had asked everybody to consider that. And then when I went back to this, and I don't know if everybody has this policy in front of them, but the first paragraph, the first full paragraph on that page also states that the open meeting minutes must be posted on the website within 10 days. And yet it states that the open meeting minutes are available for inspection during regular office hours within 10 days after board's approval, which means they're on the web, but inspected in the district's main office in the presence of the secretary, the superintendent, designee, or any board member, which frankly doesn't make any sense. So I was wondering if this policy, I mean, we could discuss the first item I raised about open meetings, rather closed sessions, but I'm wondering if this should be reworded. It sounds like this is a carryover from years ago, was never cleaned up, because in my mind, if it's on the web, why do you have to have somebody supervising you reviewing the policy when it's already open and on the web?
I don't know the answer, Johnny, but judging by the footnotes interspersed through here, I don't think this is something that we left that's been superseded by time. This looks like something that the press service still feels is an appropriate thing. The only thing that I can think of is perhaps the reason why presence of somebody is required is I think this is talking about inspecting the original of the minutes as opposed to just a copy of the minutes, which is available on the website. Now, I don't know why we need to have a policy about people inspecting originals, but I wonder if state law requires us to. So my suggestion would be if you have questions about this, rather than have us amend this on the fly, my suggestion would be that we pull this particular policy out of the package and maybe, have administration go back and figure out whether we really need that paragraph or not.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. I think, however, we do have to have some discussion on whether anybody beside myself feels that access to the closed recording to verify or settle a dispute would be beneficial or not.
And I'm trying to remember how we left that last time. You raised that. I think probably I said, let me think about it to some degree. I can't remember whether there was also some homework that was going to be done from administration on this. Or
Really just footnote 25, just to confirm the reason. And really it didn't want it, if it was going to be used to escalate and cause, problems within and amongst board members. That was really the big reason.
And again, I think if there's something that comes out that's factual and it's used to continue the discussion, kind of makes sense to use. And John, I think what you mentioned was that's not so important because the minutes are the official recording anyway. The problem is that we all know that the minutes are, particularly in closed sessions, are scant outlines.
and that's the idea. That's the philosophy of minutes. The notion is the only thing that counts is what the board actually voted on.
Right.
Therefore, you don't expect the minutes to give a blow-by-blow of the discussion, and to some degree, you shouldn't be citing the blow-by-blow of discussion back at people several meetings later, because that's not what the board did. What the board did was just their vote. Now, having articulated that philosophy, and having thought about this just a little bit, I don't really care so much whether the sentence is here or not. So if other people would like to remove the sentence, it doesn't cause me any heartburn.
I guess my thoughts are, thinking about if there's something that merits discussion and we can't recall what happened at the closed session and it didn't result in action, taken, shouldn't we be discussing it in sort of the whatever the current framework is instead of what the framework was 1, 2, 5, 10 months ago? And I also just think about the, just, if you think back to things like, taping things at, the president's office or things like that, and how those things can come back to you in ways that you can't imagine, that to your detriment, based on the content of these, is that really something that you want to allow to exist longer than is necessary?
Well, they exist for 18 months, and if they're released, they're destroyed. But taking what you said into tact, I mean, closed sessions are intended to allow free and open expression without fear of being harassed or without recrimination. I think that we don't necessarily have to go back 6, 8, 10 months. I think going back a month sometimes, because we forget the deliberations. No action comes out of a closed session, but there's plenty of deliberations that lead to that action. And the deliberations carry over from month to month at times. And sometimes you need to go back and look at what the heck did we mention? What were we talking about last time? Are we repeating ourselves? It just seems to me, and going through enough closed sessions over the last 3.5 years, sometimes I wish I had some of that information to help me think ahead, because usually they build upon themselves. But again, that's just my thought on having this open. Anybody?
I don't see the harm in allowing it. I think if there's a consensus that it would be helpful for us to go back and look at old records, I think that would be fine. I don't have strong feeling about it one way or the other, though.
I'm in the same boat. Like, if we want to go back and look at it, I'm fine with that.
So 1, 2, 3, 4.
I-
So if we could maybe get some information from press regarding the wording of that first full paragraph on that page. And then I would suggest that it would go to the policy committee to discuss and see if they can make any corrections.
And so do we want to pull this particular policy out
Yes.
of tonight's
Yep,
consent
pull it.
agenda?
Yes.
2220.
2220.
So
You wanna
whatever-
pull it or just change it the next time we change press policy, just to.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing we could do. We could approve it this evening with the current
amended.
language on the viewing the minutes and with the deletion of that sentence that we've been talking about. Then we're done with that, and then maybe the next time policy committee meets anyway, we can talk about this other issue. And you might be touching this policy twice in a short period of time, but at least you're done with the other stuff. That's fine too.
I don't care either way.
Yeah, I don't care either.
Doesn't matter to me.
All right, so wanted somebody to
Easier for
make.
making the motion.
What's easier to make a motion, exactly. And since you mentioned that, why don't you go ahead and make the motion?
I'll just say minus policy 2220. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right, I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the consent agenda of November 17th, 2014, which includes the personnel report, bills, payroll, and benefits, approval of financial update for the period ending October 31st, 2014, acceptance of annual audit report, 14, approval to replace Carpenter PVC piping, approval of bid for tractor leasing agreement, approval of policies from press issue 86 minus policy 2220, approval of intergovernmental agreement relating to the O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission, approval of contract with nursing agency, and destruction of audio closed minutes, of which there are none.
Is there a second? Thank you, John. Danny, why don't we start on your side?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Okay. Next up is approval of minutes. Are there any concerns or comments?
Only one comment from me, and this was on a closed session minutes, but I think I can make the comment without any substantive issue arising. The closed session minutes for October 27th state that I was there. I was not.
The 17th, I have highlighted. 11/17?
Uh,
Board member John Heidi was not in attendance.
Well,
and it's
today's
highlighted.
11/17, so.
Oh, I'm sorry,
this,
this
I
is
think,
noted
is-
here, so October 27th, I do have it
Yep.
amended
Okay.
in this packet right here. So you had called or emailed me on that? And
Yes, yeah.
We made that.
So I'd be happy to make a motion and on that one note as amended.
Okay.
If that's okay with everybody.
I had one other, I just want to make sure I understood this, because when I read through it, and I am on the minutes from our last meeting.
October 27th?
Yes, and I am in the part that talks about the Illinois report card. And I remember speaking out a little bit about my penchant for math. And one of the things I had in my notes that I wrote on the side was that we would have a report by the summer of 2015 talking about specific tactics as to how we were going to address the difference between math and reading. We're going to bring it up. And what it says in the minutes is a timeline for closing the gaps with the districts was discussed. And I think we specifically said we wanted something next summer with a proposal. And I just didn't know if we should either enter that into the minutes. I don't really care all that much about it. I just wanted to make sure that administration understood the expectations of what we had said last time, because that's one of those, write a note and put a star next to it so we don't forget it type of things in my book. And so it's on page 244, if you're looking through the PDF. And it's about, I don't know, an inch above technology rollout. It is towards the end.
I'd like to, but I froze.
Me too.
Yeah.
I can't even turn my machine off and back on.
Right. I don't know how to do that either.
I know which button to push, it's not working.
All right, well, I'll talk to Lori.
Yeah, if you could just see that, and again, I thought we did state we wanted to have something in that last summer, and so I would just like that reflected in the minutes so we don't forget
Summer
it.
of 15.
Can I ask a question regarding the minutes from not related to your thing at all, Scott? Regarding the minutes from a closed meeting, if we have a question about that, how can we address that? And my question only had to do about something being clear in the closed minutes.
I think that somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I think that we are able to go into closed session to discuss closed session minutes if necessary.
I think that's correct.
It's
Okay.
cumbersome and a pain, of course, because we're in the middle of an open meeting, but we could do it
Or
if
we could just
if
simply
necessary.
suspend it for next meeting and go into a quick closed session.
Yeah, can we do that? Can we
could table minutes.
Can we table the minutes and approve
Yes.
them next time?
Yes, you can.
You can.
That would give you a chance to fix them, and then we could talk about that in a
And it
closed
was,
session
yeah,
next meeting.
yeah.
And my suggestion might even be to communicate with Lori offline, and if she can fix the minutes before, we may not even need to discuss them.
Or if, other folks have looked at it and think that it's, there's no ambiguity. I just thought there was some ambiguity that I didn't want to,
Yeah.
I didn't know if somebody else would read it the way I am. Or
Yeah,
if
I
it's
think the
off
way to
kilter.
go into closed session to review those minutes, you have to actually have a closed session with the same parameters that those minutes were on. You'd be able to go into a closed session and discuss those minutes. So you'd have to use those exceptions.
Yeah, although I think discussing the minutes of a meeting that was properly called under a particular exception can be called under the same exception.
That's my point. Yeah.
I mean,
You can't use the exception to review the minutes, but you can use the exception that what the minutes were called
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
Okay.
But I guess my suggestion would be talk to Lori in the first instance. She may agree with you that it's unclear, fix it, recirculate it to us, and there may be no need for a discussion. But if there is, certainly we could do closed session before our next meeting.
So should we just punt on this
Just
agenda
table
item
it.
for the minutes, and we'll just do them in December?
Exactly.
Or
Well,
punt on.
approve
Just
the
take that one
open
section out.
meetings.
Yeah,
Take that
we
one
can
thing
approve
out.
the open meetings,
Yeah.
open minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless, Scott, you'd like to take a run at fixing that open meeting that you had an issue with.
I can take a run at it, if you want. I mean, is everyone okay with that we put next summer?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, we discussed that already.
I just have another question about the minutes. It's showing that I was absent on the 20th. And I think that I was on the phone.
Yes, I think that's true.
Yeah,
So where,
I'm on page, I guess, 4 of,
October 20 meeting?
yeah. Oh,
It
did
says
I?
participated by
Okay.
phone. Dan Collins participated
Oh,
by
but
phone
you-
in my minutes, October 20th.
Lost me for a little bit.
Okay.
for that phone.
Yeah, you're listed there, I think.
She has participated by phone here.
I know, but in one of the last ones, she says I was absent, but that's because I must have lost the connection.
Oh. Oh, for a particular vote?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can take a stab at it, we're just gonna leave the closed session minutes of the 27th off for this one, right?
Correct.
But the special board meeting on the 20th will keep. All right, I can make a stab at this. I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge, Niles, Illinois, approve the minutes of the regular board meeting on October 27, 2014, with the addition of a report to be provided to the board in the summer of 2015 regarding closing the gap between math and reading in our standardized test scores. And the special board meeting on October 20th, 2014.
Second.
Any comments? If not, Bob, why don't we start with you?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Yes?
Aye.
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 Okay, I'm winging this without computers, so board member liaison report. I've got,
If you closed it, open it up again.
what's that?
I said I closed mine and then.
There's signs all over the schools.
Dan's got mine.
Keep calm and restart your Chromebook. You know, those shirts, keep calm, and
I was
they're
pressing the
everywhere.
button, nothing would
Oh,
happen.
no, yeah, I had to close mine and after it sat for a few minutes, reopened and I restarted.
It rebooted. So board member liaison report, Dr. Hines.
Elementary Learning Foundation continues to chug along with Casino Night. The traffic safety sustainability reports, I can give you just a quick update. In terms of sustainability, there are various green initiatives underway in our buildings, many of which focus on, as you saw in the Franklin video today, having the kids recycle, becoming a little more compost-minded. Some of the schools are starting to figure out what that might entail, and they're working with Groot and the maintenance department to figure out how that's going to happen. Everyone, as Lori Lopez says, you know, has the big idea. Now it's, you know, who's going to help to do the work. So we have a variety of things moving forward. Clearly identified some action steps to do our part to reduce, reuse, or recycle whenever possible. Our PTAs and O's are getting involved in helping to purchase some of the recycle bins and various equipment that we're going to need to move some of these initiatives forward. Anything else, Vicki? You were
The
member.
biggest thing is the garbage cans, and
The
they're
bins.
going to the
Right.
TO.
Yep, the receptacles. We had our traffic safety committee meeting on October 28th. I provided an update to the group in terms of the RETA security report that was provided for the board, talked about some of the enhanced security measures we've put in place and some that we're going to be looking to put in place, you know, potentially in the future. Talked a little bit about master facility and how that will identify some potential future security enhancements. We thanked our local police departments for their participation in various Red Ribbon Week activities. And they called to our attention that they're getting a number of complaints, and hopefully you saw it in my the communication newsletter, people not stopping when the bus arms are out. So we did talk at the traffic safety meeting about the importance of that. I put it in my newsletter. I was at another PTA meeting the other night and just, you know, really telling as many people as will listen how important it is to slow down and stop when school bus arms are out. It's going to help keep our kids safe. Carpenter has some concerns in terms of a particular area where kids are crossing and cars are parking and crisscrossing. They were really hoping that the Park Ridge Police Department would put either a patrol or some type of new signage there, and it came back to us that the Park Ridge Police Department was not going to do that. So we have to figure out what, if anything, we can do to help make sure that area is safe for our students. Unsafe conditions, he said intersection at Cherry and Broadway. So we'll have to decide, and Becky's nodding her head, if we're going to do crossing guards.
The city is willing to put a crossing guard there if we are
pay for
willing
it.
to pay for it.
Yeah, if we pay for it. So, schools just reported they appreciate the increased police presence. For the most part, parents are doing a nice job in terms of pickup and drop off, and really nothing significant other than that reported. we talked about our next meeting will be sometime in January, and those meetings are just really quick, and it's nice to have that face time, I think, with law enforcement and just keeping those lines of communications open. Lastly, the Wellness Council met. This was a group I was not in participation with, but there's a variety of things happening to just promote wellness across the district. They're going to have something continue called Toilet Talk, where they post flyers in the washroom, giving you a few moments to read and giving you tips to take away. So that will continue. Healthy lunch rewards. Students will receive incentives from lunch supervisors, such as raffle tickets, as they rotate through the lunchroom if folks see that they have healthy options within their lunch. We have proceeds from March 17, 2014 fundraiser from Whole Foods that are being utilized to benefit students in District 64, such as bringing in healthy cooking demos with a traveling chef during the middle school classes at Lincoln and Emerson. We were able to purchase fitness grams, which provide a comprehensive educational reporting system to assess physical fitness of our students. So we were glad to be able to add fitness grams within our physical education programs. Open to staff on some of our Wednesdays, those self-directed Wednesdays. Staff can also participate in healthy cooking demos. And there was a Whole Foods birthday party in November where the Wellness Council was there and attended, and they had a little booth because they're really trying to just encourage more and more outreach into the Park Ridge community. Goals for 2013 and 14 that had to do with encouraging staff wellness, engaging parents and community. Council members agreed that there has been good progress made both in 13-14, in 13-14, yes. Goals for 14-15, after a discussion, it was felt that all goal areas, except improving food served at school, would be addressed this school year through activities carried over from last year, as well as a few new projects. Other items discussed were continuing the staff pedometer challenge. I guess that's something that goes on. And some suggestions were made in terms of allowing more time for folks to participate in that, and the opportunity to use your own devices or cell phones. So all in all, the meeting that Margaret, our district nurse, conducted, well attended, and just a lot of positive information shared.
The other one is the insurance committee, and I'll just give you a quick update.
Great.
For the 13-14 school year, our PPO, we ran a little over premium, about 102%. Our HMO, we were a little under premium, about 91.3%. Those do not net each other out simply because of the number of people in the PPO. The weighted average is, unfortunately, we didn't pay enough premium at the end of the day by a little bit.
That's the benefits of being in the cooperative.
Right,
Yep.
and that's the benefits of being the cooperative. The renewal quotes, the preliminary ones, are due February 5th, which will time for the budgets. We'll get the final around April 16th. There was some discussion about the staff interested in increasing co-pays to lower their premium, so they're going to explore that. They were requesting maybe sometime down the road a discussion about online enrollment, which may be something for them to engage. I don't think it costs us anything, but it's something we have to set up. And then there was some talk of a Medicare supplement policy, which would be something 100% funded by them at this point, but it may come to negotiations in the future. So I just want to give you a heads up that those were some of the conversations that the committee had brought up while I was there. Other than that, it was quick and easy, and you're out of there. How's that, Becky? Did I get it right?
Okay.
Okay. Other items of information?
Other items, there's just really two that I think I'm going to focus. One, you should have, but actually both you should have at your table. A report from Carpenter School, an update. Did you want to take that one, Vicki, or not Vicki, Becky?
Carpenter School stayed warm over the weekend, and warm today, in spite of the cold weather that we have. There were no staff complaints at the end of the day, which is a very positive sign. We suspended doing any more of the corrective work, the retrofitting or the corrective work that is ongoing until next week when students and staff are out of the building, because it requires draining some of the zones and retesting and rebalancing those particular areas. But I think on a positive note, we continue to make progress. And the fact that we stayed warm all weekend and didn't have any failures, and the fact that we made it through today is positive news for me. So, and the staff. And frankly, we should thank the staff for their patience. And Vince Avola, the custodian, head custodian at Carpenter, because he has gone above and beyond over the last 12 months in making sure that he's there problem solving 24 hours a day. So,
Really and truly. All weekend long, right? Is he
all
not
week,
sending
right.
us emails? It's really something.
I do have a question about Carpenter. Last we had a talk was a month ago, and the month before that, everybody's been very eager to resolve the conditions. Now we're in cold weather, and I would have expected with our project manager on board and with everybody knocking their heads together, I would have expected that project to have been completed by now. Was there something specific that came up and delayed things down?
No, I just think that systematically we fixed this issue before we could fix this issue, before we could fix that issue, versus doing everything all at once and never understanding whether the problem was solved. I think we've just taken baby steps each step of the way, and we frankly did not, I don't think anybody anticipated this cold snap that we're having so early. So I think we could have been done by the end of November, but I think it's going to take us a couple more days, weeks, to make sure that we have everything done and that we've tested as we've gone along to make sure that the corrective actors.
Unforeseen issues that once they dug into them, they took a little bit longer to rectify. Certainly that PVC versus the piping issue, that was a big setback. The flaps, the heating system. But Nicholas has been pretty lockstep with everything. They're very systematic in their approach, so if something's not working, they really dig in to figure out how to make it work. And they just keep coming out until
We've
it's
made
done.
more progress in the last 2 months than we've made in the previous 12, trying to problem solve the issues there.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased with having Nichols and Associates on board with us. I think, again, their attention to details has proven valuable for us.
Yeah, and I've heard that several times. My only concern was I thought we were looking at a final completion date of the end of October rather than, so I'm just wondering why an extra 3 to 4 weeks, that's all. Particularly with the cold weather on us now. Dr. Hines?
Yeah, and then, so 2 quick things. So also in your table packet, you should see an advanced copy of the financial report for 2014 that really I wrote about in my last memo. Brian and Bernadette have been slaving away at this document, really trying to help create a user-friendly, appealing document that tells the story of kind of where our revenues and expenditures come from, and keeping kids kind of at the center of what we do and why we spend the money that we do. I think it looks fantastic, and it's going to go live this week. We will do a school messenger with a hot link. We will post it on our website, do a press release, and we're currently then investigating what it would cost to have a postcard made. It's the cheapest way to mail something. So everybody in the community that doesn't have kids within our system would know that it exists if they go to the website to see it.
You wouldn't duplicate, would you? I mean, you would only mail the postcards to people who don't have children in the community?
I don't know. I think we would just do it to everybody.
Because I think you get a cheap, I don't know.
We're currently looking.
Get a cheaper rate if you mail it to
I think
everyone.
we would send it to everybody, just as an FYI.
Just do bulk?
Even though it might, right. And that's why we're going with a postcard, because it's the cheapest way, to get information into everybody's hands. We investigated, what it might cost to print and mail. It's not cost effective, but. So here it is.
All right, couple of comments then.
And,
Go ahead, Bob.
So this is something we're looking to publish soon?
we're going to send it out this week, yeah.
So if just out of curiosity, if I look on page 2 in this table at the bottom with operating funds, Pardon?
There's a typo.
Well, I'm looking in the fiscal year 2013-14, it starts at the beginning, fund balance is 71, and then it says, basically the net of revenues and expenditures is 6. So that would lead me to think you would be at
That's a 41.
70-something. So yeah, John's saying maybe it's supposed to be a 41 at the top. But 71 plus 6 would be 77, not 47. And then the next year starts at 47, and the math works correctly there. You see, you go up by 1, you're at 48. So I think that table needs an adjustment somehow.
So if you guys could check that table, I
Yeah.
think you just have a
It's that
simple
beginning
typo
fund
on that.
balance number, maybe.
Yeah.
I would suggest that everybody take a look at this over the next 2 days or so. And if there's any proofreading or suggestions, just email them, Dr. Heinz, so that we can incorporate this. I think this is a long overdue publication on the part of the district out to the community, establishing our financial status. So thank you for this effort. Again, anybody who has any comments or additions, please email Dr. Heinz directly.
Is this something that will be on the internet or in paper,
Oh,
or
yeah.
just
It's
asking?
going to be hyperlinked through School Messenger so you can access it. It's going to be on the website. We're going to do a press release on it. We're going to make sure that we're going to blitz so people know it exists. And then that postcard will notify the community.
Okay, great.
That doesn't get the School Messenger saying, here it is, click here.
Great.
Yeah. So, all right.
At your tables, at your seats, there was a copy of a closed meeting minutes. Please keep that confidential. The next meeting is scheduled to occur on December 15th. The time in the agenda notification states 7:15. However, depending upon the communication from the city regarding the TIF issue, we may very well have to adjust that start time. So once I get it may very well be 6:30 or whatever have you. But that's all dependent upon what we hear from the city.
And when will we know that?
As soon as I know.
Okay, and you'll email us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually don't sit on that kind of stuff.
No, I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah.
I just have a quick comment about the review, Brian, on paid student fees. It just really concerns me that Franklin is a small school like Carpenter. We only have 9 students that haven't paid, and Franklin has 29. The reason it concerns me is because I think there is an issue or perception at this school that even though we are sending people to collection agencies, and those people will feed into our junior high. So I would love to, have you get together with Dan and the assistant principal and just see if there's something going on here, because it's a really high number for a small school.
And I have one final comment, and I spoke about this to Dr. Heinz. Back on October 19th, 2014, in the Tribune, they had a flashback thing, and they were talking about the Spanish flu of 1918, 1919. And I think we're all aware that in the northern suburbs, there has been flu go around to the point where schools have been closed for a couple of days, where massive cleaning has been undertaken. We're all familiar with the norovirus, the couple of cruise ships just recently. And I'm not even talking about hemorrhagic fever, where don't even want to go there. But my point is, this is something, flus, norovirus, these are things that can be encountered and are being encountered in other school districts right now. And this is actually a significant thing, because if a large number of students do get ill, we will have to shut down a school. I don't know if anybody's considered this in the past, but I know for a fact there's nothing in our policy that governs that kind of a thing. Is there anything in operations that would cover something of that magnitude, of that scale?
I mean, I think when swine flu, Bernadette and I have talked about some of these illnesses that have kind of come and gone. They have communique that's been, drafted that we would probably use to frame out how we would communicate deep cleaning measures and so on and so forth. But it is something we can dive a little more deeply into.
Yeah, we should
If
have.
you'd like us to.
Well, I just in the 1 in a million chance it might happen, we should have some outline of a plan on how to go forward in dealing with it. You get a couple of kids ill, or you even have a class getting ill. is considerably different than shutting down a whole school.
I'll talk to Margaret, our district nurse, to see what, she thinks we, should and could potentially do to be ready. I don't know off the top of my head if we have anything administratively started or that we could, other than how you guys structured it several years ago when swine flu was a big scare for schools. I really don't know. So it's something I can add to an administrative agenda to talk about and then go from there.
Yeah, that'd be great. Just asking that you consider it. Okay.
Johnny, one other thing just occurred to me, actually, as I was flipping through these fine paper things that we have at our desk, and that is, I wonder whether it would be possible to take any of this paper material that we receive during the course of a board meeting, be it things that are passed out by staff, or maybe even documents that we receive from the public during a board meeting, and have those scanned in and uploaded to the board documents site, so that basically what I would love to be able to do is go home, throw all of this in the recycling bin, and know that if I ever need to see it again, that it will be where I downloaded my board
It's
packet
actually
to
a very
begin
good
with.
idea, yeah. Okay, I got those down.
Speaking of that, will these documents that we got tonight be uploaded on there?
Are those the ones you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, if you can start with this evening, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Make sure I have. Hopefully Madeline has extra copies of some of the Hodges stuff and whatnot.
Do you need anything in mind?
Okay, I'll find them. If I'm short, I'll email you. So don't do anything.
I'm not so hasty as John.
All right, good. Okay. But I will, and then if we have table copies moving forward, we'll make it our practice to just upload them. All right.
All righty. Any other comments or concerns? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. See you all in December.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.